Good morning, everybody. We are live, and it is the middle or almost the end of June, Pride Month, and it's been a crazy June. I mean, it's gone by really fast, but let's bring Christian Cano on and let's get this started.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Coffee Upon Dulce. I'm Christian Cano, one of your co-hosts. I'm along with Jenny-Jaymes Gunn, our weather woman at Eye Candy. Our other co-host, Mama Ruth, I believe, should be joining us. We'll see if she has time today. I know she's got a lot going on in her family. And then Jeff Scott is in hiatus until July. So I want to welcome everyone who's joining us. We have a wonderful special guest and a topic that we're going to be talking about. We have two guests that were not able to join us today because of some last minute issues that occurred, and I'll mention that as well. So once again, today is June 24th. Am I doing that right?
Yes.
Wow. A week from, that's incredible. June's almost over. Summer is officially on. We are going into July 4th. We're going into all these other wonderful areas. So welcome to Coffee Upon Dulce. We're so happy to have you, those who are watching us on Facebook Live, and also the many people who watch us on YouTube and Facebook later. Our last two shows have averaged about 6,000 viewers, so we're very fortunate that you are taking the time to listen to the topics that we are trying to share and educate our community, specifically our Latinx community, but as we've seen with our demographics, we have everyone has been watching us for various reasons. So we're going to go around the virtual Zoom box here, the Brady Bunch box, I like to call it, and introduce yourself, introduce your imaginary button if you can, and then we'll talk about the topic, salute Coffee Upon Dulce, and then we'll get started. So who would like to go first? If you're looking, I can tell you, I think it looks like, here we go. It looks like I have baby Trump Pinata next. I have Jenny, Queen LaWana, and then Maya, who has joined us as well. So please go.
Good morning, everybody. Hi, I'm Jenny-Jaymes Gunn, and I represent the National Organization of Women, Charlotte Pride, of course. And then as far as buttons, I'm wearing a t-shirt for a project that I've been involved with for probably close to a year and a half called Airing Out the Dirty Laundry, and it's a feminist, all femme identities, whether you're trans or non-binary or cis or anywhere, that support women. We do art projects, and then the art projects talk about airing out our dirty laundry, basically. And so it's kind of a cool project. Of course, if I had the button on, my other buttons would be Black Lives Matter. Could never say that enough. And then also Medicare for all. LaWana?
Thank you.
Well, hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Good morning.
Yes,
Good morning. So I am LaWana Mayfield. I am a host on Square Media Network. I have a video podcast, Unapologetically Black with LaWana Mayfield. We actually will have a show this evening. I am second and fourth Wednesdays of the month. I am a former elected official. I was the city of Charlotte's first openly LGBT elected official. So Jenny and Christian, thank you both for recognizing and acknowledging that Black lives do matter. Some days it seems like Black talent matters, but not Black lives. So people need to understand there's a difference. And I'm a community activist by trade before stepping into politics, and excited to join you all this morning, but not for this particular discussion topic, but just glad to be here with you.
You're always welcome, LaWana. We love you.
I love you.
No.
Miss Maya?
I think she stepped off for a second.
Oh, okay. Well, Maya Wells is a up-and-coming community advocate and activist. She just graduated from college, so she is a lot of things that she's got going on. I know she's involved in Medicare for All. She's also involved in a lot of social justice issues, Black Lives Matter as well. I've seen her at some of the marches and protesting. And I don't know if we'll have time to talk about that, but if we have time to talk about that, we're welcome. Kyle Kirby, who's running for Republican in House Seat 102, I believe. was going to join us because he has been a huge proponent of ending no-knock warrants here in the Mecklenburg County in the North Carolina area. That's something that he's been pushing passionately about since this occurred and even before that occurred. But unfortunately, he had a lot of things going on. He's a substitute teacher. He does a lot of things, and he was not able to make it. Barbara Bacon, who's our neighbor, her gardener showed up. So she was not able to join us. First world issues, the gardener showed up. So hopefully we'll have Barbara on the next show as well, because the next show is going to be very, very exciting. But on this show, we specifically wanted to talk about an issue that everyone knows about, but do we know exactly all the circumstances around it and why we say her name? The title of this show is called Say Her Name, Who is Breonna Taylor? And I just like to start with some kind of basis, I guess, and everyone can correct me if you have more information. I just got this off the New York Times. It was a story that was published, I believe, on Sunday. And it says, it kind of talks about Breonna Taylor's death and kind of who, what, when, where, why. But I just want to read this specific section because maybe this can put some context on what we're talking about. It said, shortly after midnight on March 13th, Louisville police officers executed a search warrant, used a battering ram to enter the apartment of Breonna Taylor, a 26-year-old African-American emergency room technician. Mrs. Taylor and her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, had been in bed, but got up when they heard a loud banging on the door. After a brief exchange, Mr. Walker fired his gun. The police also fired several shots, striking Mrs. Taylor at least 8 times. According to the Louisville Courier-Journal, the police have been investigating 2 men that they believed were selling drugs out of a house that was far from Mrs. Taylor's home. But a judge had also signed a warrant allowing the police to search Mrs. Taylor's residence because the police said they believed that at one point, 2 men used her apartment to receive packages. The judge's order was so because the police said they believed that one of the 2 men, I repeated that. The judge's orders was so-called no-knock warrant, which allowed the police to enter without identifying themselves as law enforcement. No drugs were found in the apartment, as a lawyer for Mrs. Walker said. Mrs. Taylor's mother, Tamika Palmer, said her daughter had big dreams and planned a lifelong career in healthcare after serving as an EMT. She had a whole plan on beginning the nursing, buying a house, and starting a family, she told the Courier. So these are kind of like the skeleton bone facts of what the New York Times, and there's a lot more talking about why did police fire the weapon, no-knock warrants, what's happened to some of the police since then. I know another police officer was fired yesterday. I believe it was last night. So I think that maybe 2 police officers or 3. So who is Breonna Taylor, and why do we say her name? And who would like to kind of dive into that for those of us who may not know a lot about this case?
So I'm going to jump in because, as you mentioned, a lot of people unfortunately don't know about this case. Unfortunately, this case happened in March of this year, but it really did not make its way through the media until the community. It was because of community members sharing it online and then demanding action that the masses, those of us that are even here in North Carolina, even know about it. When you think about the excuse, well, at one point we believe drugs were sold. Okay, at what point? So I live off of Freedom Drive. When I moved into my neighborhood in 2001, there was nothing but prostitution, drugs, drug activity all through my neighborhood. I don't know what the hell the person was doing before I lived here was doing, but you walking in with a no-knock warrant without identifying yourself, without doing your actual research. And let's keep in mind, the individual they claimed they were looking for was already arrested. He was already held. So there are multiple levels of where justice was not served. In this case, you have a young woman who is at the prime of her life, who was an essential worker, an EMT worker, who has been out serving the community while she is asleep in her bed. What to them probably seemed like individuals attempting to break into their home, and her boyfriend slash fiance chose to attempt to defend his home, defend he and his fiance's lives since they did not know what was going on. And that resulted in multiple shots. Okay, so officers have been fired. Where the hell is their mug shots? They should be arrested. There is no
Mhm.
excuse, no justifiable excuse for you to be able to break into someone's house. And this is not the first time. You have had an individual, Breonna Taylor is not the first. And unfortunately, that is the situation. Black women, unfortunately, do not receive the same media attention as Black men when it comes to interactions with law enforcement that end in assault and or murder. You had Atiana, who was in the house playing video games with her little nephew, who was murdered by the police, who were walking around peeking into her home, didn't even announce themselves, and screamed from outside on the porch, freeze, throw your hands up. Don't nobody know what the hell is going on. And then immediately shot into her home and filled her with bullets. This is not a one off. This is a reoccurring issue. And the bigger challenge is the fact that you're not seeing Black women get the television, the news media, the outrage from community because people just don't know about these incidences the way that you see Black men when it comes time for a protest or a march, and seeking true justice, because we can't, which is a misnomer in itself, because the system is doing exactly what it was set up to do. And there was never any justice in the system when it came to Black people, the working poor, the working class, the workers. So the system is doing what it was supposed to do. But if we're going to break this system and fix it, the time is now, if there's ever been a time in our lifetime or our parents' lifetime.
Well, I
Okay.
completely agree, LaWana. The one thing I've noticed, in the feminist circles, we talk about, the wage gap. And I know that's off topic, but when you look at the wage gap, for example, for Black women versus white men, it's like 50 cents on the dollar
Exactly.
difference for doing the same job. And so our economic disparities in our system, and like you said, that's the best way to put it. The system is built and it's running exactly the way the rich and the powerful 1% of America, our oligarchy, is designed it to do. It's not a flaw that's causing this. It's actually intended to do this. So what we have to do is take it from the top down and say, dismantle these economic fences that keep people in silos, and open the doors. We will be more successful when we break those down. We look at the New Deal and the reforms in the 1960s and how much more our country ran better when we open up the door for people. And so that's one of the big things. And two is actually banning these tactics, and we'll talk about this later, but
Yeah, the no knock, the no knock
Republican
things.
Senate bill, the no knock,
Mhm.
body cameras, there has to be direct
The
action against
conversation of
police, which
defunding
is
the police.
defunding police, defunding the DEA. We shouldn't even have a DEA. Like, we spend billions of dollars every year to encourage drugs. The DEA is not designed to prevent drugs from coming in. It encourages drugs, and there's proof on that. And what is amazing is how silent the Second Amendment gun nuts are when it comes to Black lives.
Exactly.
I have not seen one white nationalist at a Black Lives Matter protest protecting the Black lives by using their Second Amendment rights. Where are they? Where are
Well,
all these Republicans?
I don't think it's any secret now after what we've gone through for three and a
All
half
these
years.
libertarians.
Yeah, with Jenny, I don't think it's any secret after we've gone through 3.5 years of Trump that the real agenda is not about Second Amendment and protecting. It's really about protecting their Second Amendment. It's not about everyone else's. It's about them. And so, Maya Angelou says, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. In a way, we're kind of chumps for every year thinking that somehow they're going to change and they're somehow going to come to our aid, because
I don't know where you've been. I haven't believed them. I know who they are. We just need to get them out. I mean, I'm tired of white nationalism. I'm tired of the reason why we had Confederate traitor statues up for 150 years is because the traitors that tried to overthrow this country to protect slavery still had tributes up there. That is white nationalism. That is straight out of the Nazi playbook. It's straight out of.
Well, listen, Jenny, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want to get back to who we're talking about.
Yeah, definitely.
I want to focus on her because I feel like a lot of people, unless you're engaged in this and looking at the news reports and talking about it and hearing from your around a circle of friends or your silos that are talking about this, most people, even those who probably have attended some of the protests and marches, especially in Ballantyne or some of the other areas or NAACP ones, most of the people, mainly white ones who are now coming to the efforts and joining, don't really know about what happened to her. And so I want to continue to talk about her because this seems like, if anything, regardless of who you are, this situation, I'm trying to visualize a young white woman in her bed with her fiance and her husband, and the police storming in there and shooting the young white woman.
All of those police officers would immediately have been fired and charged with murder.
Exactly. And the boyfriend, who has every right, according to the white people who are standing your ground, protect your property. Yes, he would have been the hero. He would have been, the NRA would have held him up and said, see, this is why we need people to, weapons is to protect us from tyranny, protect us from government. And so there is that complete disconnect, purposely for some people because maybe they don't truly understand what happened. I think most people think,
and it's not a disconnect, Christian. We got to acknowledge that the reality, even though a lot of people don't want to face it, we are a nation that is built on white supremacy. We are a nation that has been telling you since you were a child that Black people are bad, Black people are lazy, Black people are evil, even though Black people built this nation right alongside the Native Americans. But when Black people said we're no longer going to do your work for free, that's when Black people all of a sudden became lazy and shiftless and had no use. We're not going to whitewash the Black experience, specifically this Black female's experience. Mr. Walker defended her, but yet they charged him with attempted murder of a police officer. That you did not identify yourself as a police officer, and the individuals that they claimed that they were looking for didn't live there. It wasn't either one of them, even if it was one of their friends. Even if my cousin is a drug dealer, I don't know what the hell they do 24/7. So if my cousin came to visit me and you claim that you watching my cousin, that still doesn't give you a right to come into my home without acknowledging and announcing yourself before you just start shooting into my home or attempt to break into my home, because it was breaking and entering. So this young woman who was a friend, who was a teacher, who was a cousin, who was a daughter, who was a partner, who was a co-worker, who did almost, if you do any Google search on Miss Breonna Taylor and you finally get a chance to hear from her family members, they will tell you that she lit up every room that she walked into. She was that young person that truly believed in joy and happiness. Even though she worked a job of service, what you saw when you looked through her timeline were pictures of a young woman who was enjoying her life, who had friends, who had family. This is not some person who was isolated. This is not
Mhm.
some little white boy who we always want to make excuses for that went in and created a mass shooting, shooting up a school,
Mhm.
shooting up a church. But yet we want to portray him by showing pictures of him in high school and his graduation photo. And or this is not Brock who raped a woman after drugging
Yeah.
her, where the judge says, oh no, we should destroy his career because of one bad mistake. This is a
Yeah.
young Black woman who was living her life and serving others, who was murdered in her
Mhm.
home by police officers back in March. And when she was murdered, we are now on June 24th. She was murdered on March 13th. And the best
Mhm.
that Kentucky can offer us is that a couple of officers have been fired.
Yeah.
Are you
Mhm.
freaking kidding me?
Well,
So
and
we got to start really addressing the issue
Mhm.
that no, for many people, Black lives do not matter. And
Yeah.
when we, the Black community, truly take hold of the fact that our lives do matter, if the Black community were to treat law enforcement the way law enforcement treats the Black community, you would have a very
Mhm.
different conversation.
Yeah. Maya, from a young perspective, I know you're out there with a lot of young advocates and activists. Being a new college grad, congratulations.
Thank you.
Going into your next phase of life. Uh, what's your feelings in the community on her and things like that?
Yeah. So hi everyone, I'm Maya Wells. I mean, so many thoughts come to mind. And the first thing I always remind myself is I'm incredibly thankful to say that I have Black friends and Native Americans and Latinx friends, but I will never know what it's like to be them. And I'm not going to act like I'm entitled to it. All I can do is just listen to them because they're the ones who are hurting. And I care about them. And um, and as long as the war on drugs and the militarization of the police still exists, this is going to continue to happen. And we need like what President Trump proposed or signed an executive order on police reform the other day. He's not only still funding the police, but it's not solving the problems that will continue this from happening.
Mhm.
But that's not to say that these protests aren't working. They definitely are. Um, but, you know, how many more of unarmed Black people, or how many stories are we going to have to read about unarmed Black people dying from police brutality or any form of police encountering without public pressure? And
Do
I'm
you see, Maya, from your lens, do you see public pressure starting to mount? I know you're young, but you're not young. You've been doing a lot. Do you see that much differences? And I'll ask the same thing to Miss LaWana. I call her Queen LaWana. Queen LaWana, LaWana, do you see differences between what we're going through now, the people that are speaking out, the allies, any political pressure, political forces? Do you see a difference between now and let's say 2016? We'll start with you, Maya, then we'll jump to Queen LaWana.
Um, yeah, I see a difference, but that's only because it's convenient.
Okay.
And 4 years ago, there were people who wouldn't have been as vocal because it wasn't convenient. But now, because
Yeah.
everyone is doing it, everyone is saying Black Lives Matter, Black trans lives matter,
Mhm.
etc. That's when they're starting to act like they care.
Okay.
And I say that loosely because now
Okay.
everyone realizes it. And if you want structural change, like if you want fundamental change, you're gonna have to, and you should be leading by example and walking that path towards a just world, even if that means saying something that will make other people feel uncomfortable. Because we need fundamental change. People have had it. People are tired. People are hurting.
LaWana? Oh, you're on mute.
It feels different this time. It doesn't
Okay.
feel the same way. We are seeing movement, but we're also seeing people no longer going along to get along, meaning a lot of these individuals that's jumping on the bandwagon and promoting, and because it's for business sake, because again, it's not about Black lives, it's about Black dollars. So businesses that historically have not really had a stance regarding Black Lives Matter that are jumping in, but then your employees, your immediate management, not executive level management, but your manager and supervisor has been the antagonist in your office to make life hell for that Black male or that Black female. I have seen individuals, I mean, let's be honest, 2018, when I tweeted out that we're seeing an increase of terrorism within law enforcement under 45, the world was pissed as I don't know what. A lot of those same individuals that sent hateful emails and comments about how dare I say that, how could I say that about the police, now are putting up Black Lives Matters posts on their page. Screw you. I'm not playing that game with you, because as long as I'm living, I'm not going to let you rewrite the narrative, because you were that same one that contributed to this, because we had the ability to stop with some of the funding here in Charlotte through CMPD. I didn't leave council until 2019. After the events of 2016, we had the ability to redirect funding from CMPD, and there was not 6 votes there to do it. There were plenty of times that I was the only yes vote or the only no vote when it came time for housing with approving a land rezoning. All of this is tied in together, and how you create ghettos, and then how you turn around because of where you develop those ghettos and the proximity of all the amenities that you now want, how you whitewash a whole neighborhood for white people to then come in and get the land for next to nothing, and then turn around and put a ridiculous price tag on what was once there, but you made no investment into the community prior to. Well, now you're seeing legislative movement that is happening that you haven't seen since the civil rights movement. But we're still not going to forget that you had Black communities, entire communities that were thriving, that were financially successful, that white people went in and bombed, that white people went in and burned down, where they used police helicopters to go in and destroy. So yes, I'm a total supporter of defund the police, because it is about reallocating those funds. If you go on Twitter today, you'll see the latest budget for CMPD, and you will see exactly how much of that money is spent on militarizing our local law enforcement versus training and education. But yet, every time there's a press conference, they love to talk about, well, we do this training, we do that training. Well, you know what? Follow the money. And the money
Yeah.
will tell you exactly where the priorities are. But I do believe that what you're seeing now is a different feel in the movement, where change is actually going to happen and has been happening and will continue to happen, because we as a people, as a community, whether you're Black, Latinx, Native American, and white, if you are tired of watching the horrific acts of a government that is not for all people, you are stepping up and you are finally fighting. And for those individuals who love to play the middle, the time has come where you're going to have to choose a side. And what
Yeah,
side
I
are you
agree.
going to be on?
I agree. Jenny, you have you
Well,
seen in 30 seconds, because I've got to introduce our sponsor.
okay, a couple things. I mean, the one thing is defunding mechanisms that create economic disparity. I mean, we do have to redo our educational system. We have to redo our economic distribution, and we have to make sure that we have the safety nets in place to make sure nobody falls through. And I mean, nobody should be left behind in a country like this. And then same thing is to ban, not fund a study like the Republicans are suggesting doing, but ban certain things. So if a police officer is involved in discharging a weapon of any kind and their body camera is not on, they should immediately be taken into custody, immediately charged. with a crime because they knowingly left their body camera off with the intent of firing their weapon. So that you should never go on to a call or a traffic stop or serving a warrant or anything and have that body camera off. That is intentionality, which is also motive, and that is probable cause for a crime.
Okay.
So they should immediately be fired and immediately taken into custody, just like we would if I walked into the city hall and I said, I suspect a crime's been going on, and I discharged my weapon in city hall and was going to make a citizen's arrest. They'd throw me under the jail. So they should, civilians, police should be held by the same standards that civilians should be held. If you fire a weapon, you go to jail. And then you get cleared.
Sure, Jenny, sorry to interrupt you, but one of the things that struck me about the event that you and I both attended on Wednesday, it was organized by Mark Jarrell and some other individuals. Councilperson Graham spoke in length about the unfortunate situation with his sister who was killed during the Emmanuel shootings, I believe, and it was an anniversary of that. One of the things that really struck me, and I've always thought of this anyway, and I'm known for saying things about my own Democratic Party that ruffles feathers sometimes. But one of the things that struck me was there was a young man that stood up and said, we have a Black police chief, we have a Black mayor, we have a Black fire chief, we have a Black DA, we have he went on, a Black city manager, and we have Black, he listed all of the people that we have, or that he said that we have, that should be fighting for these change for the community. And it's not happened.
Nope, because there's a saying in the Black community, all skin folk ain't your kinfolk. So just because your skin color is that, it means absolutely nothing if you have no relationship and no connection, because you have made it. So therefore, you do not see a desire or a need. If anything, you go above and beyond to be even more harsh and more critical of other Black people because you're too afraid of losing your power and access.
Yeah.
And
But go ahead, Maya.
Oh,
Please.
sorry. Yeah, and I'm not sure if people realize this, but Black Lives Matter was actually created under a Black president with a Black attorney general.
Exactly.
Yeah, and people need to start making that connection. I mean, yes, Barack Obama is a great spokesperson, but Black Lives Matter was created under him. What does that tell you?
That tells you he didn't have the support that he needed, because at the end of the day, that one Black person, if you don't, especially on the presidential level, we never want to talk about the fact that we, the people, did not give him the Congress to make sure that he had the support that he needed. Imagine if President Obama had unwavering support by the Democratic Party, the way Trump has had unwavering support by the Republican Party. But
I think
they were not going to support that Black man to do what needed to be done.
Well, I think that highlights, and we have a show that's going to occur in 2 weeks. It's called The 3 Ps of Politics, and I think that highlights the interesting dynamics we have in North Carolina and not all southern states, but specifically in North Carolina and Mecklenburg County, where you have people of color who run for office, who run just to pander to a few white people, and they completely ignore the base. And there is this thinking, and it's been proven wrong, but they still do it. That if you're of color, you're good enough to be a city council person, you're good enough maybe even to be mayor. Never good enough to be a governor, or lieutenant governor, or a congressperson in a non-majority, an Alma Adams district, for an example. There's only so many places that you should be here. And so when I see these, individuals that are of color, specifically, I'll openly say our mayor. Our mayor seems to be so concerned about people that she doesn't want to upset, that her own community, I don't understand the political logic behind that, because we know that if she just took care of her base and took care of the Democratic base, they're going to vote for her. But the other individuals are going to be wishy-washy all the way to the end. And so it doesn't make very much sense. Politically, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me for this city to have so many prominent people of color in those elected positions, but yet they don't seem to always err on the side of the people. They seem to
But
err on the
Christian,
side of, yeah,
but we have to talk about it.
yeah,
That's a hard road to toe.
yeah,
Let's be
yeah,
honest, because I did it.
yeah,
And when I spoke out specifically for the working poor, for the working class, when I
yeah,
said we have created multiple billionaires in the city, there's no justifiable reason for us not to have Black millionaires in the city. What did those
yeah,
same individuals do? It was easier to attempt to put me out on a ledge by myself
yeah,
and not address what I was talking about. It was easier for the media to
mhm,
retweet and write an article of the
mhm,
negative opposed to having a real conversation of, well, why aren't we benefiting? Why aren't the allocation of funds actually benefiting the Black community? Why do
mhm.
contracts keep going before council and only one council member is voting to approve this large dollar contract to a Black owned company? There was no one there. Imagine if you had had 5, 6 council members that actually
Exactly.
cared about equity and equality, but
So
you didn't.
Luana, question, is there is there an organization or leadership or the ability for some group, whether it's the Black Political Caucus, whether it's the International Minority Cap, whatever group it is there someone that's powerful enough to gather the elected officials who currently are there and try to help them maybe go towards, is there that here?
No. And the reason I say no is because we have become so individualistic as a
Sure.
society that we don't listen. So you've had individuals attempt to talk to elected officials about, hey, you're not representing the community that fed into you to get you into this position,
Mhm.
because as an individual, all I care about is me.
Yeah,
All I
yeah,
care about is how I'm going to be impacted. You got a Democratic mayor who pushed for the RNC to be in Charlotte
yeah.
when no other city wanted it. Can you
Mhm.
imagine what the impact would have been if everybody had said no? But that same Democratic mayor was then appointed to a committee by
Yeah.
this Republican president. So
Mhm.
when your self-interest overrule everything else,
Mhm.
then it's hard for anyone. The International Minority Coalition is going to work to identify strong candidates who care about the community to get them elected. That's when you make the change. But
Yeah,
in the meantime, those that are currently there, that got there
yeah,
on the backs of Black people,
yeah.
Latino, working poor, working class people, Asian, those that got there aren't being
Mhm.
held accountable. Think about it. You have more diversity than you've ever seen. You
Yeah.
have Dimple, who represents the Asian Pacific Islander community. What
Mhm.
has been done for the Asian
Mhm.
Pacific Islander community? We have
Mhm.
working poor, working class members of the community where, thanks to COVID-19, don't
Mhm.
qualify for unemployment.
Yeah.
You're not even hearing anyone talk about what's being done to reach out to help them.
Mhm.
So as a community just have to do better about
Mhm.
what is your record in community before we let you run for office
Yeah.
and then
Hey,
let you be elected into office.
but I wanted to jump in on this. It thing, money allows needs white money to stay in office. You can't become mayor of of Charlotte or any major city. I mean, and I'm using an example. So I came from a city called Amarillo, Texas, a city of about 200,000 people. The
Yeah.
mayor, the last year that I saw her run, raised $250,000 from rich white attorneys because she
Okay.
is a rich white attorney for a $15 a week job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me that rich white people are putting these people in office.
I
When you run for office, as you know, LaWana, and I'm gonna straight up say it, Black people may have voted to put her in, but she's answering to wealthy white donors. And that's
I think, Jenny, you and I
and
have
that's
these
why she's trying to
conversations.
play both sides. Is that
No. Jenny, you and I have these conversations, and I do think that, for those who don't know, 30 minutes after this show, Two Queers in a Truck we'll be driving around, and we'll maybe be talking about this topic. But I do believe that that is true, but I believe it's on its way out. I believe that we have a lot of progressive candidates at different levels that are proving. Sometimes you can go around that model. And I do think that those things are changing. Give an example. These are just very generic examples. AOC just won her primary last night. She does not pander to the money. She does not pander to those things. Charles Booker, I believe, is a very close race, maybe even upset the hand-picked Democratic Senate candidate in Kentucky. He looks like he may not win, but he's doing very, very well. And he was not out there looking for white money. There are a lot of examples around the country of insurgent candidates that are going against the power of the establishment that are winning because regardless of, and this is one of the things that we have to do as progressives, or if you're not a progressive, we have to do just as Democrats in reminding our voters that regardless if you give Cynthia Wallace $1,000 or if you give her $1, you still have one vote. And you have to remind her, Cynthia, I may not be able to give you $1,000, but I can bring 5 voters and Erskine Bowles can only bring 2 voters. So you have to remind them of your power. And I think we just don't, because Charlotte and North Carolina has always played to kind of white women rules, is what I like to say. Until we have the hunts, whatever you call it, to say, we're no longer going to play by your rules. We're going to play by rules that benefit our community and benefit us. And their biggest fear is that we will realize that their money doesn't always win. Because if that was the case, Kenny Smith would be mayor. Dan McCready would be in Congress. Kay Hagan would be in her second term. So we know that money doesn't win elections if you don't have a great candidate. So I do believe the money thing. It's important.
It's a twofold thing, though. Is in where your premise is wrong is Dan Bishop was just as rotten of a candidate as Dan McCready, but Republicans also dumped a ton of money into Dan Bishop's campaign. I mean, their war chest was bigger than Dan McCready's, and
I know we've had this conversation, but the difference is Dan Bishop spent his money going after his base. Dan McCready spent $20-something million going after a very few voters and not the base.
Yeah,
and so it's how you spend your money.
I'm not saying he was smart,
but
especially, but I do think. I think money has a lot. I think money had a lot to do with Vi Lyle's decision to, promote the RNC coming here. I think there's a lot of money. There's a lot of the inequity issues. Where we're spending public money in the wrong place.
I want to get back to Breonna. Because this is really what this show is about. And I apologize, everyone, if we're kind of sidetracking. We're just giving you snippets of our next show.
So, Christian, I'm going to ask you to forgive yourself because it's not sidetracking. It's all tied in together.
Okay.
Policy making, because your elected officials are the ones that identify for Charlotte, the city manager. The city manager is who hires the police chief. Your council is who funds the police department. So it is all tied together because your elected officials are the ones who create the laws that what just happened? We have Breonna's law has been passed because of elected officials pushed by the community. The community is the one who went out there and who marched in order to get some justice, but we're still waiting for true justice to happen. So I need us to recognize that these things are connected. They are tied together. For the simple fact that by being an educated voter, one, recognizing the power of your vote. Look at what happened yesterday in Kentucky. Look at what happened all around at the polls. and
Yeah.
how you go from over 3,000 polling locations to 10,
To only
15, 20.
200. Yeah.
While how you have to then bring the courts in again, elected positions, judges are elected. So we have to be educated to understand that it's not one lane that we're
Yeah.
attempting to maneuver here. We're maneuvering the lane of protesting and social justice movement. We're maneuvering the lane of electing the right judges, electing the right local representation, state representation, and national representation. All of those lanes, when there's synergy, creates the equity and the access that we all, that the majority, not all, but the majority of us say that we want. That would prevent future cases of,
Mm-hmm.
like Breonna Taylor, of people who are in their home minding their own business, having law
Mm-hmm.
enforcement break into their home, assault and or commit murder, and then the
Mm-hmm.
families are left trying to pick up the pieces.
Well, and you know, and when you don't have, and Dr. King said this, is when you don't have, you know, and I'm paraphrasing because yeah, I can't pull a quote from memory, but economic injustice is the root of all the problems. So, you know, it doesn't even matter what skin color you have. If you're poor, you're poor, and we have too many broken safety nets in this country.
I'll push back on that, Jenny, because if you're a poor white person, you still think you're better than a poor black person.
Oh yeah, no. And from social justice, I agree with that.
Yeah.
But poor is poor, and
Yeah,
and
I agree.
poverty
Yeah.
causes infrastructure problems as far as health, national security, trust, community trust, economic issues that make many people turn to alternative or black market fundings of their life, you know, because a lot of people get into you know, selling the drugs and other things because they have no other way of being upwardly mobile. And so when you have a system that is designed to suppress people in every way, like voter suppression, like we saw in Kentucky yesterday,
speaking of Kentucky, speaking of Kentucky, Charles Brooker is only 5,000 votes away from Amy McGrath. They have about, looks like 58% of their precincts still, or only 30% still left in. Still kind of close. I don't know if we'll find anything out here in a while. So that's very interesting to see that. And I don't know, does anyone know if you have to get 50% not get a runoff? Or I'm not sure how that's working because she's not getting 50%, he's not getting 50%. I don't know if the top two go into a runoff or if the top person just wins outright. So that's a very interesting race. And I do want to say, this is another picture of Breonna Taylor, if you can see her. I took some time over the last couple of days of Googling her and finding out the things that she wanted to accomplish in life. And the most heartbreaking picture that I think I found, and I hope you can see it because I can't figure out how to show the pictures on our Zoom call the way other people do. This one here. This is Breonna when she was little. And I had this conversation with Mama Ruth. Mama Ruth is a pro-life, as I am pro-life as well. I just happen to believe that my pro-life has nothing to do with the women's decision to do what is best for her reproductive health. And I thought to myself, if our pro-life individuals, the individuals, many of them support Trump, evangelical whites, some really conservative Catholics who are part of the pro-life movement, if they could look at these individuals as children, as our children, someone's child, I wonder if that would make them or get them more engaged or concerned about all babies that die, including all the 120,000 COVID-19 babies that have died. We've lost 120,000 Americans from COVID-19. In 3 months, we've lost those individuals. I don't know if we can somehow convert their faces into when they were babies, if that would allow them to see the tragedy that is occurring, not only with Black Lives Matters, with people being killed by or murdered by police, but also people in other situations. I'm trying to reach to their hearts and minds to, I don't know, does anybody think that they will?
But I'll stop you there, Christian. I
Okay.
think we've dehumanized people that we don't want to see. So white nationalists don't want to see Black people. They don't want them to be seen. They've dehumanized them. They have referred to them as lazy, evil, drug dealers, the same way we talked about undocumented Mexican Americans that they referred to them as drug dealers, murderers, rapists. That is what white nationalists do. They dehumanize you the same way they talked about indigenous people, the same way they talk about trans people and bathroom bills. Is you want to dehumanize them. So they are never going to allow the humanization of these victims of being slaughtered. They're never going to allow Breonna to be humanized. Put a human face on it would destroy them. And so that's your reality. And that's what you're fighting against. Is they've run this narrative for so long that it is never stopped.
But it's not
And
just
this,
white naturalists, and we got to have
Yep.
that conversation, because Black people have faced discrimination within the Democratic Party as well. So
exactly.
we can't let those who are tuning in think that, oh, I'm one of the good white people, when you have
Yep.
said and created racist environments yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're right.
Did you know that
right.
Did you know that we have never had a person of color state chairperson ever? But yet, people of color are the base of this party.
Yep.
That whenever we have a high profile election, whether it's Senate, whether it's governor, whether it's attorney general, even up until recently, lieutenant governor, the establishment party in our party in North Carolina always immediately backs the white candidate. They never think that the person of color, as they did to the person running against Cal Cunningham, they immediately backed Cal Cunningham, even though our other candidates, Erica Smith, had the better polling numbers. And even today, I saw Cal Cunningham on a Zoom call and also on his commercials, and he has yet to have the courtesy to say, this is what I'm going to do to win Erica Smith's supporters. This is what I'm going to do to win those people who believed in her. Their thinking is, and we will talk about this on politics. Their thinking is, who else are they going to vote for? Well, we know they're not going to vote for you if you don't go after them. And I'm so excited to see as of lately, whether it's the Minority Coalition, whether it's Black Political Caucus, whether it's African-American Democrats, they are now starting to have grade cards, I believe. They're going to start grading the elected officials, Democrats, and seeing, where do you stand on the issues? How many times do you show up to our church? Is it just right when you're trying to get the BPC endorsement? Where do you stand on these kind of things? Because I do think that it's just so interesting that for some reason, whenever it's time to do these things, out of all of the wonderful qualified individuals in North Carolina, they can only find white men to run for office. And these are Democrats. And I just wish that we had a white man Democrat that had the decency to say, no, we've had our time too many years. Let's give someone else a chance. And I'm still waiting for that. So looks like the dog is being called in the other area.
As a young person, it would be great to hear from Maya as a young person what she sees regarding the political climate.
I'm so sorry.
It would be great to hear your thoughts on the political climate, because at the end of the day, we need politics. But are we addressing the needs that you and your colleagues and your
Mhm.
peers, what is it that's important to you?
Yeah, so what's important to my generation is ending the war on drugs and demilitarizing the police.
Mm.
As long as those issues continue to exist, we're going to continue having these conversations on what the hell can we do to fix these problems.
Mhm.
And I haven't researched this, but fully, but the Democratic Party, I believe, proposed some sort of police reform. They need to do more. Like that's not a keep going, because as long as people are hurting, we're going to continue having these protests. We're going to continue having these conversations, and I believe, and as well as all my other good friends, as long as the war on drugs, as long as you can still be criminalized for having marijuana and nonviolent um, thing,
Sure.
then we're going to continue having these conversations. And and it's great that the party's doing something, but they need to do more. Like we've had enough. I've definitely had enough, because I mean, everyone here knows this as well. 80% of workers live paycheck to paycheck in our country. We don't have that much time to be focusing on what these elected officials are supposed to be doing. And we're so angry, we're fed up. And it's as and you know, it's great that we have Black women in public offices, but what are you doing for the Black community?
Yes.
Because it gets really under my skin. Like for instance, I don't need to call any elected official out, but like Kamala Harris,
Go ahead, do it, girl.
you know,
We got,
like
but if
Kamala.
we don't call it out, then we're still doing the disservice. So yes, share.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like Kamala Harris. She is a cop. She was a terrible district attorney and federal prosecutor. She worsened the war on drugs. She supported the death penalty. She ignored sex workers when it comes to sex trafficking. And she was terrible on truancy when it comes to, are you all familiar with truancy and um, mandating that if you don't allow your kids to, I mean, if you don't bring your kids to school, you'll face some sort of offense. I don't recall the term, but yeah. And California's 3 strikes law, I mean, that's the thing. And she's not Black, but she's mixed, and people think that as long as your political, as long as your identity overweighs what your job is supposed to be, then be quiet. And I'd be that kind of person that would be so angry, because I don't care that you're Black. I care about what the hell you're going to do for people. Because at the end of the day, the point of politics is to implement policies to help people to improve their lives, not just to go along to get along. And it's disgusting knowing that there are people, there are elected officials out there who get away with it. And I don't recall one of our state senators' names, but she's a Black woman, and she takes money from Duke Energy. And Duke Energy, to my understanding, one of the things that they've caused was a coal ash mess, and it worsens poor communities of color and Black communities. And she knew that, but because she takes money from them, she didn't say anything. And like, that's the thing, especially when you realize that, how can you not get angry? And like, to me, I don't necessarily care if you're Black and a person of color. I care about what the hell you're going to do for people. How are you going to help people? Give me policies. It's not enough to say that you're against Trump. It's not enough to say that you're against the Republican Party. What are you going to do for people? People are tired. People are hungry. People deserve to enjoy the only life they're able to live fruitfully.
Well,
I hope I answered your question.
and one thing to tie all that back, what Maya just said, back to Breonna. Breonna was a casualty of the war on drugs. The reason why that warrant was served was because there was suspected drug activity in her apartment, which There was no
Well,
probable cause or anything like that.
Well, yeah. Apparently, there was suspected that a
But hang on a
package
second,
was
Christian.
delivered there.
Hang on
Yeah.
a second. Don't talk over me.
Well, girl, I only got 30 minutes for this show. I can't have you talking all day long.
Well, okay, whatever. But she was a casualty of the war on drugs, and so if you're funding the war on drugs, then you're going to continue to have Breonna Taylors. You're going to continue to have military style tactics done to civilians, and that is the whole point. I mean, everything that we can look at, all of the civilian murders by police, a lot of it is a result of the militarization of the police and the aggression that is military style tactics, and that is a big crux of the problem.
And I also want to say one last thing, Christian, I'm sorry. All these issues are interconnected. When you don't have the opportunity, when you don't have a livable wage, when you don't have, when you're not able to afford healthcare, when you're not able to afford higher education, you're going to end up in these disgusting situations where your life is at risk. So all of these are interconnected: gun violence, sex trafficking, labor trafficking, lack of access to healthcare, poverty, unfortunately,
Okay, y'all. I want to thank everyone so much for joining us. We have run a little bit over, but this was a very, very important topic to talk about, to explain to people who Breonna Taylor was and why we are saying, say her name. I hope we gave her justice, and I know we talked about some other issues, so I want to thank everyone. Thank you, Queen LaWana, for joining us. Thank you, Maya. Thank you, Jenny. And Jenny and I will be jumping in a truck here in just a moment, talking about some other further things. I think we have like 5 topics we want to talk about. So as we leave, I just want to remind people that there are changes occurring because of the activism and advocacy of so many people who are marching, but also sharing their views, emailing their city council people. They were able to do some things here in the city of Charlotte. In other cities, they are actually in other states, they're actually getting rid of the, I forgot the term, but police officers, I think it was in one of the states, they just got rid of their ability to shoot anybody, whatever that's called. They just passed that yesterday, that protection has been taken away from them, which is a wonderful thing. Please, if you can, listen to LaWana's show, what she talks about. She talks about some very interesting topics, great conversation. She's unapologetically, I think it's Unapologetically Black. Is that correct?
It is.
That the name? Yes. And she does a great job there. If you have time to listen to other people's points of view who are having things like this, listen to what they have to say. I had the good fortune to listen to the LGBTQ Chambers event yesterday that had Sheriff McFadden, had the new chief of police on there, some other people on there, and it was a very insightful conversation. I was also able to listen to the Afro-American Mecklenburg County caucus. They had Malcolm Graham, who was explaining what happened in the Betty's Ford Road incident. Not all the answers that he answered were satisfactory. And the community wants answers, considering how can 400 people gather and no police be around, where you have 10 protesters and you have police in riot gear. So what's going on with that? Yeah. And then Josh Stein was on the show as well, and he's running for office again. And I wanted to ask the question, but I didn't. I wanted to ask Josh Stein, when his time is over, which I think he's running this time and maybe one more time, we don't know yet, will he commit to supporting a person of color to fill that spot? Or will he just do what they always do and support another white guy? I think it's time that we hold these white elected officials accountable and say, if you want the votes of people of color, you've got to promise us that you're going to try to get a person of color in after you, whether it's the governor, whether whoever it is, because until we have those people at the table at those levels, many things in North Carolina aren't going to change. Will you support a Speaker of the House that's of color? Will you support a Senate Speaker of the House if people of color help you take over the North Carolina House and North Carolina Senate. Those are the conversations I think that we have to use, and we have to use our leverage now, because if we don't use it now, they're going to say, well, I didn't know. Anyway, we're going to go around, tell us where you're going to be, and then we'll end the show on Facebook, but we'll stay on for Zoom to do a quick 30-second promo. So if you'll go around and tell us where you're going to be.
I will be on Thursday night. I will be watching, or I guess that's tomorrow night. I'll be watching Barely Funny's 1-year anniversary show. So that is on. That is Lauren Ansley, a female entrepreneur, and so she's celebrating her 1 year in business. And she is very pro women, very pro LGBT. Many of her comics are female comics and LGBT comics. So it's a great space. It's a free, open to the public show. Just go on Barely Funny's Facebook page and sign up. LaWana?
So you can tune in tonight. We're actually utilizing Be Live right now because of COVID-19 and respecting space. So please, everyone, wear your mask when you are out and about. Masks can save lives. But we will be on Unapologetically Black with LaWana Mayfield is on Facebook, Square Media Network, SQAIR Media Network. So tune in. With the show will be starting at 7:30 tonight. And follow me on Instagram, Facebook, as well as Twitter.
Excellent. Maya?
Yeah, so this weekend I'll be on a virtual silence retreat to remind myself that my mental health is important. And I'll probably be going to social gatherings surrounding everything going on this week. I believe I forgot who's in charge of. I believe it's SEAC, but I'll be going to any of those and with a few good friends and reminding myself of social distancing and wearing my mask. But yeah.
So you're like a little Tara Lawn. You're everywhere.
Unapologetically, yeah.
Yes, exactly. I'm Christian Cano. I will actually be here. I will be, Jenny and I will be jumping in a truck here in a second. And thank you, Jenny brought me some vegan food for lunch. So I'm really excited to try that. Next week, the topic of our show is called Politics, the 3 Ps of Politics. We'll have some individuals that have either run campaigns or they're in politics. We'd love to have you back, Ms. LaWana, just to see how politics is changing in North Carolina and Charlotte, not only with COVID-19, but moving forward. An example is, I just think that we are seeing a changing of the guard in, I know in the Democratic Party, we're seeing a changing of the guard, and the old Democrats are stepping aside, I hope, and leaving room for people like Maya, I don't know if she's Democrat, but other people who want to come in and make changes for us. And I'm so inspired by our younger generations and the older generations, not that LaWana is old, but the older generations who have paved the way.
I am.
LaWana was talking about things that we're now talking about. And you have to give people props that had the courage to say those things then. And now, as LaWana said, now everyone's going, oh yeah, Black Lives Matter. But when she said it back then, oh, she's a troublemaker. So thank you for
Gotta love being me.
Yeah, thank you for doing what you do. All right, we're leaving on Facebook, so we're gonna wave, but please stay on if you're on Zoom. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you. Oh, and in 2 weeks, we have a show called What's It's Like to Be a White Woman in Charlotte. That's going to be really interesting.
Wow.
I want to hear that one. All right. Thank you. Bye.